If somehow you've missed it, Palworld is like the way people have described it is Pokemon with guns. I think that can be a fair way of describing it, but this was basically a game that just exploded out of nowhere, seemingly nowhere. And you go around, you collect all these little pals. It's very Pokemon-y for sure. I mean, there's no doubt there. I don't think anybody's gonna be shocked at that revelation. And interestingly though, it's not like your classical Pokemon game, which a lot of people are comparing it to. It actually is much closer to like Arc, whatever, Survive Evolved, whatever the hell. It's technically a survival game, like a survival crafting game. And what's kind of novel about it and interesting is that you can fight these things with your pals helping you, but you also have like bases that you build, and some of the pals have different abilities that maybe make them really good at mining or logging or crafting various things. So you can assign them to your base to work for you. So you're collecting them for combat and then also for like helping you within your base. It's kind of a cool amalgamation of a bunch of different things all together. A lot of people have said that it's like a blending of Pokemon with Arc mixed with Breath of the Wild, mixed with a couple of other things, and it works quite well. Now, it's still early access. It's pretty heavy early access. There's clunky animations, there's the occasional bugs or crashes. There are some finicky things going on, but all told, people are having an absolute blast with it, okay? This is kind of the crucial part of the conversation, okay, is that people are having a hell of a time with it. As you can see here, Michael just tweeted this out. 1.4 million concurrent players on Steam and surpassed 5 million copies sold in 3 days. Bear in mind, this is available on Xbox as well, not on PlayStation, because PlayStation does not allow early access games, evidently. So it's a sort of de facto console exclusive to Xbox until it's completed, which is also crazy. So you can get this. I think it's, am I wrong? Is it on Game Pass? I think it's on Game Pass, isn't it? It's a pretty big get. Just kind of a surprising get. Yeah, they didn't even pay for it to be exclusive is my understanding. It's just because the main reason it's not on PlayStation is because they don't allow early access stuff, which is very funny. So oops. Oops, that's a bit of an oopsie. To put it into perspective, with these stats, it's sold 5 million copies in 3 days. There's a couple of things to note about this. Some people are like, well, see, that beats out even like Starfield on Steam. Well, okay. It's $27, okay? Starfield was priced at full price, okay? It's not really fair to compare the two because one is less than half the cost, okay? So of course the cheaper thing, it has the potential to sell more units. It's still wildly impressive, don't get me wrong, but we have to be accurate about that. There was also some misunderstanding. Somebody said that they broke like the all-time records for most concurrent players on Steam for a non-free-to-play game. That's not technically true. I don't think there was another game that reached like 3 million plus concurrent players a handful of years ago. So it's not technically there. It's still fantastically impressive, but it's not quite there. It's a fantastically successful game. And I think that there's some conflicting reasons for this. You know, of course, if anybody could figure out exactly why this was successful, everybody would just do that thing, and then everybody would have games that are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it's not as simple as just, here's why it's successful, because if you knew it, then you'd be able to do it too. There's a lot of kind of macro movements going on right now. It's sort of a slow period in the gaming industry right now at this particular moment. People are looking for something to play, something exciting and different. The sub-communities within like the Arc kind of survivalist game and crafting games, there's sort of a lull there in that subgenre of gaming. So they were looking for something new and fun and exciting. Like the other thing is Pokemon fans are freaking pissed off because they've gotten a bunch of piles of garbage for the last handful of years. Every time that they get a new game, they just don't get really the chance to experience a quality polished title, which is crazy because Nintendo has a reputation for releasing really high quality polished stuff, except for Pokemon games. The last few have just been steadily decreasing in quality. This last one kind of rapidly decreasing in quality. So I think it's a combination of boredom, people looking for something new to play, and then also the core group of Pokemon fans that are just kind of looking to shove it to Nintendo for screwing them over consistently and selling them piles of slop because they can, and people will still buy it, which is the most disheartening thing, is that the latest Pokemon releases, I guess, they had horrible technical issues and was just totally broken and embarrassingly bad. And they still sold millions upon millions upon millions of copies. So people are sort of revolting by supporting this. That's part of it. And I don't think you should overlook that. However, at the same time, on Twitter, which should immediately disqualify most of this, on Twitter, there's some people that are very upset about Palworld. Now, initially, I understand the concerns, okay? The concerns are that the CEO of the company that made Palworld, or is making Palworld, he has a history of interest and support for AI and AI generation within game development. He has expressed previously that, you know, he worked with Nintendo through like some Nintendo training program or something like that. And he basically just said, I respect Nintendo a lot, but they try to do something totally unique and novel every single time they come out with a new IP. And he said, I don't really think that that's necessarily the best way of doing things. I think if there's a handful of games doing things in an interesting way, we should be able to bring them together and kind of create this sort of gumbo of fun. Of, oh, I took a little piece of this game, I took a little piece of that game, a little piece of this game, and we combine them into a new recipe. Yes, it's just potatoes and sausage and maybe chicken, but when you combine those things together, it creates something bigger than the sum of their parts. So initially people look at that and they say, oh, he supports AI art and AI generative AI and things like that, and therefore it's bad and you shouldn't support it. I don't think that really follows through, though. For one, there are already protections in place. Within Steam, if you're found to be using generative AI in the context of like basically just using generative AI to create art for your game and not doing it through proper channels to like pay licensing fees to the artists that it was trained on, all that stuff, Steam can already unlist your game and screw you over, just like that. So there are already protections in place through Steam. You have to disclose all of that stuff. Everything has to be made very, very clear. Now, it's possible that that stuff was used in Palworld and they could get in trouble, but as of right now, nothing's happened. There hasn't been any revelation like that. And you better believe these people are digging pretty deeply and trying to figure that out. With all of the other stuff, though, there's like, there are stacking problems that people allege, such as the straight comparison to Pokemon. Now, like I said, there is no question that this is inspired by Pokemon. There's no doubt, like it is, okay? It's inspired by Pokemon, and that is a big selling point for a lot of people. That's part of the reason a lot of people are interested in it, is because it's basically Pokemon with guns, right? It's Pokemon with crafting and with a big world you can play with your friends on, and like that's part of the selling point. Does that necessarily mean that supporting it is unethical? I don't really think so, because again, like if you start with that precedent where if you're inspired by this thing or by this other thing, therefore supporting you is unethical, you get into some murky water. I mean, this was something that people brought up where they just compare some of the monsters within Pokemon to monsters within Dragon Quest that have been around for longer. And it's pretty clear when you put things side by side, like, yeah, these are kind of direct inspirations or parallel thinking. Like most Pokemon are built around like real world animals, and then they're kind of extrapolated from that. So like the caterpillar, okay, we have the caterpillar and then a caterpillar over here. Or, oh, like we have the hermit crab or conch shell, whatever. And so, yeah, they're going to be roughly similar. The platypus inspired thing to the platypus inspired thing. The bat inspired thing to the bat inspired thing. The mouse unicorn thing with the mouse unicorn thing. So there are going to be instances of parallel thinking, but are you really going to say that these aren't at least taking some small nods from these? I think they are, but they're reworked in a way. And I think the fair use law is actually, even though it doesn't apply here, fair use in the context of like online content does not apply to this, to be clear, legally speaking. But I think in terms of the spirit of the rules and the laws and regulations with it, I think are more comparable. Because, or at least they're fair to bring up, because in the case of this, like within fair use, the question is whether it preserves the value of the original work and is truly transformative. Because like if I do a reaction to a movie where I just hit play, or like some streamers have done this where they watch like Master Chef on stream and they just hit play and just sit back and watch and eat their slop, and then they just rake in the subs and money because people are watching Master Chef on the streamer's stream, but the streamer profits off of it. That's not transformative because it doesn't preserve the value of the original work. There's no reason for you to go and now watch the show yourself in a way that would support the creators of the show financially, because you just watched it in its entirety through this streamer that was just watching the TV show, right? In the context of this, I would say that these recreations, in the same vein, preserve the value of the original work. Yes, they're probably inspired. Yes, there's some things that are uncomfortably close, like the bat designs are super close. Some of these like ethereal things and the crabs and everything, like there are some that are very close, but it still retains the value of the original work. Dragon Quest doesn't really care if Pokemon's successful. If Pokemon's successful, Dragon Quest can still be successful. And I think that in the same vein, even though Palworld is heavily inspired by Pokemon, I don't think that it alters the value of the original work of Pokemon, beyond making it very clear that Pokemon has made very little progress in terms of improving their product offering over the last decade or so. They just have never been able to really do a whole lot of stuff. With all this, though, there's still just an ocean, a veritable ocean of people that are saying that you're unethical if you support it, that there's a lot of stuff here that's just bad, and that you supporting it is tantamount to supporting commercialized theft. And I'll be real, I think a lot of it gets to be a bit of a stretch, and here's what I'm starting to see. Okay, this controversy has been brewing for the last few days, and the game is only doing better and better. Clearly, let's think pragmatically, okay? Clearly those arguments are not working, okay? And when we've seen in the past, and Hogwarts Legacy is a good example, when you have people on social media trying to cancel a game or a product for any given reason, whether it's allegations of sloppy inspiration, shall we say, or allegations of like supporting a transphobic author or whatever it may be, if the initial cancellation attempt doesn't work, the harder you push, it's almost like people start to support it out of spite, just because they get so annoyed. They get so livid. And Hogwarts Legacy is a great example where a lot of people were just like, oh my God, you guys are so annoying. Calm down. We understand your point. I just don't agree with the point. That doesn't make me doesn't mean I love J.K. Rowling. I just don't agree that canceling this game is the fair conclusion. But then they keep pushing. If you guys remember with Hogwarts Legacy, we had people coming into our chat when we were streaming the game, typing out in all caps the N-word with the hard R and everything, and many other slurs, to try and get the stream canceled, to try and get the stream shut down, to try and get all of my stuff demonetized and blah, blah, blah. And it caused a lot of people to go, if you guys are right, I'm not sure if I want to be right. Like if you guys are really on the right side of this issue, would you have to resort to that kind of thing? I'm not sure you would. I think that maybe means that you're the bad guy. It's like when the I forgot what comedian brought it up, but it's like with the stormtroopers just casually look around, they're like, wait a minute, we're on the Death Star, maybe we're the bad guys. There at some point there should be a realization of like, wait, we're gonna go in there and type that into the chat to try and get the streamer that doesn't seem cool. Like, that seems like we might be the bad guy, it might do the opposite. And I'm starting to see the early stages of similar behavior of insanity with regards to Palworld, where people are coming in and trying to cancel streamers or YouTubers if they so much as talk about the game because of this or that. Now, do I think those people necessarily care that much about intellectual property disputes between multi-million-dollar or even billion-dollar companies? No, I don't think they care that much. I think it's more that generative AI is a very hot button issue right now, especially within artistic communities of artists. So I think that because it's a hot button issue, it's easy to tie these things together. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. I understand it's a hot button issue for a lot of people. I just don't think it's fair to react with such crazy vitriol. The thing is, with a lot of these discussions, there are protections in place already. If Palworld's developers have overstepped legal grounds and have infringed on copyright and have infringed on the copyrighted designs of Pokemon or this or that, there are protections in place. The allegation that because the CEO previously said he thinks there's a place for generative AI in video game design, that therefore the game should be canceled, that is an argument that no one is buying. Nobody thinks that that's fair except for like 350 people on Twitter, okay? Nobody's with you. And you can tell that because the game is only doing better and better as you've been grasping at straws trying to do that. Because frankly, there probably is a place for generative AI in game design. Now you have to be specific about it. You can't just say that. You have to say, which even now there's going to be people that clip that. But with something like generative fill on Photoshop, if you're trying to create a little piece of artwork and you're like, I just want to replace that window, I want to put like an ocean outside the window. So you do a little generative fill on it for that concept art to be like, oh yeah, look at that. Cool. Does that mean that therefore the game should be canceled? I don't think that would be fair. I don't think so. Now, if you're just having it be like, okay, have AI art do absolutely everything, then we probably have a problem. But that's why you have to be a little more specific than just AI involved in games. You can't just say like, therefore it's all bad. Like, okay, are you saying, like, one of the things I've used AI for in the creation of my videos is that I have like outlines, and I've described this before. I have huge outlines and notes from when I play a game. So let's say I think I used it a bit for the Starfield review, where I had just a list as I played through the game of things that happened. So I would be like, maybe it's at this timestamp, this gunplay sequence is broken because this guy clips into the door and then his line of sight breaks, so he can't be attacked, but he also doesn't attack you. And then the next line or bullet point is me saying, this section graphically looks fantastic. And then the next section is, I ran into this bug where this happens. And I go through, and there's pages and pages and pages of these bullet pointed things. For me to manually sort those would be super annoying. So what I did is I just copied it, pasted it into ChatGPT, said, can you organize these bullet points based on what they're discussing? And it took 10 seconds and organized all of that. What would have taken me like an hour or two of tedium, rearranging and slotting things around, it did in 10 seconds very, very well, and saved me a ton of time. Now, should that video be canceled because I dared to use AI in the process of creating it? I don't think so. And I think the argument for why it should be canceled in that case would be a bit of a stretch, because like, what's it infringing on? My own note taking? Like, how does that work? Yeah. Oh, it's putting other people out of work. Myself, with me saving time. Like, okay. It gets into questions about productivity and where the place is. So there just has to be a bit of specificity with this. It's the same kind of thing that happened, I think justly so, in the case of NFTs. If you guys remember with NFTs, the craziness around that, pretty much any marketable use case for NFTs were tied up in scams and BS. Like, there basically, as far as I'm aware, was not a single pitched use for NFTs that was actually helpful and productive. There were potential use cases. NFTs, having a game code for, say, Steam tied to a public blockchain registry, that could allow you to have a version of a video game that you buy, like Palworld, on Steam, and then you could sell that specific copy of a digital asset, the digital game, to a friend. So it could actually create a secondhand market for digital video games. That's a super cool use for something like a non-fungible token. But is that what people were trying to sell you? No, they were trying to sell you stupid pictures of monkeys. So of course it didn't go anywhere. And that's why I think it was fair to be like, yeah, NFTs usually are a scam, but the technology itself is not a scam. And what a lot of these people are trying to do is they're trying to tie generative AI or AI in general to the same type of thing, where it's like AI is a scam or AI is theft or AI, and they try to toss those things in. And it's like, not necessarily. Sometimes, sure. Some of these cases where like there was that really uncomfortable thing with Midjourney. I don't know if you guys remember that, but with Midjourney, they trained the latest version of it. Let me see if I can find it, because I had it bookmarked at one point. Well, I just tried this whole Midjourney V6 give you licensed characters even if you don't name them thing. So here's he asked it to generate a video game character who is a young girl traveling with a middle-aged man in the apocalypse. Aspect ratio 16:9. And it generated that. And these are some of the other things it generated. So clearly, it's been trained on pictures and wallpapers and things of the actual Last of Us game. And then it's using that as inspiration to generate this stuff. And the argument is that if you were to use this type of tool to create the art for your game, clearly it's taking things from artists, like human artists, and then using that to create a separate thing that's not entirely separate. Therefore, there should be like the ability to license to the original artists or whatever else. And I think that makes sense. That's a reason to be concerned, because they can just generate whatever other copyrighted insanity that they wanted to do, and it wouldn't necessarily be totally fair. There are potential concerns with generative AI as it pertains to Palworld. My stance is the last place this stuff should be adjudicated is in the court of Twitter, a cesspool of intellectual depravity. Okay, there is no reason you should be like looking for really robust adjudications on these issues on Twitter. If there is a real issue, you better believe Nintendo's going to take the opportunity to sue them, and it will get settled in court. I think the reason there hasn't been a lawsuit yet is probably because Nintendo's lawyers are trying to find a way to make this more compelling and more conclusive. And that's just going to be very, very difficult to sell. If like Palworld officially supported something like this, a mod that just puts straight up Pokemon into the game, then yeah, there would be an issue. Just a little Pikachu hacking away. Then there would be an issue if they were officially condoning and supporting this, but they're not. So they could shut down this mod, but the question of whether or not you'd be able to shut down the game, that is still very much an open question. I personally expect Nintendo to probably try to toss out a lawsuit. I wouldn't be shocked at that at all. I think it would be more surprising if they didn't try it, because they have more dollars than cents, it seems, a lot of the time. But we will see. We will see. The fact they haven't done it yet is surprising, honestly. But they might just be getting their ducks in a row to prepare the lawsuit and get everything figured out. As for all this other stuff, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. I personally have not heard any arguments or seen anything that makes me feel like supporting Palworld is therefore bad, because the CEO previously liked the idea of AI and also said that he'd rather combine ideas from different games to create a different game. I don't see how any of that is cancelable. And I think when you're putting your eggs in that basket, when you're trying to like cry wolf, the problem with this is what drives me the most crazy, is that it diminishes the validity of actual claims of AI overstepping, because there have been instances of that with smaller games, but we're going to see a lot more of it in the coming years, where just straight up entire games are created with generative AI stuff. And in those cases, people will need to step up and be like, hey, we can't allow this. We can't tolerate this. This is overstepping. But with everybody crying wolf over this, where yes, it's inspired by Pokemon, but as of right now, there's been no clear or definitive comparisons of them lifting things straight from Pokemon or anything. It's going to make it really hard to make those valid arguments when we really need them to be successful. And that's my bigger frustration, is just that this stuff is actively, I think when it's not done properly, it can harm later causes that really are more important. When you see like, and we've already started to see this. We saw a couple of instances where like entire marketing teams were laid off within certain companies, and then they just start uploading AI art that's really, really lazy. And so it's like you fired all of your artists and like marketing gurus because you thought you could save money and just do this, but it looks so much worse. And then everybody starts making fun of them and teasing them, and they realize maybe it was it was better to keep the actual team on board. But when you're throwing everything out because a CEO previously said he'd like to find ways to use this technology in their game process, or he likes amalgamations of stuff like that. That's a tough thing to sell to people, I think. took my thing.